Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching this weekly in-depth ag forecast brought to you by Ag South Farm Credit. Now, in this video, we're not only going to walk through our near-term severe thunderstorm risk, which we do have tomorrow on Saturday, but I want to let you know that at the end of this video, we're going to cover all of the brand new long-range model updates that were just released in the middle of this week. We're going to try to make some sense out of what they're suggesting for us. At the very end of the video, we're going to talk about South America. There's been an important development there that's been going on with the potential drought issues on the safrinha crop. But the first thing we got to talk about is the storm system that over the last 18 hours kind of rolled through the midsection of the United States, and it's on its way toward us, and with it, it's going to be coming some locally heavy rain and the risk of some severe storms. Just yesterday, watching the storm system kind of evolve in the southern part of the United States, it did produce some hail down here in Texas and Oklahoma and a lot of lightning, which means we're going to be seeing the same storm system, which over the last 24 hours put down almost 200,000 lightning strikes moving toward us. Now, this morning, it currently sits still over the lower Mississippi River Valley, which means we're going to have to watch the evolution of this system get toward us in the next 24 to 36 hours, but it's on its way. Now, to put it in a broader context, as I mentioned, it's going to be bringing in some wetter weather. This is a look at the last 7 days of total accumulated precipitation. We are already quite vulnerable across a lot of the southeast and especially in Ag South territory here to flooding given how wet things have been. And don't forget earlier in this week that low that started just off the coast and rolled right here along North Carolina's coast into Virginia before moving up into New England, just dumping rain on one area that has been very, very dry. Now, speaking of very dry, I want to show you a couple of things. This is a look at the newest drought monitor. And that region right in through here is still showing up now in the first stage of drought. So the outer yellow shade you see there, that's just abnormally dry. We have about, approaching 50% of the land area in the lower 48 in some form of drought or that abnormally dry category. But in the true drought categories, which go from D1 to D4, we've only got about 20% of the country in that. And we've seen throughout this winter just significant changes in the drought. I'm going to do this again for you here because I really like looking at this. Over the last week, we're just taking a look here at where we saw drought class change. It is important to note we saw a 1 class improvement here and here, but no change in this area. And if we change this map out to show you the whole of winter, so let's go back 3 months, this is what the drought monitor class change has looked like. And so it is important to note that some of our longer range forecasts for this past winter, which was to call for drought relief or no drought development in most of Ag South territory, we did okay on that. I want to let you know, though, we've got other spots around the country that are still quite vulnerable where we grow crops that compete, here. And I want you to think about those of you that are growing cotton down here pretty far to the south, about what we're going to be watching in the western plains and southern plains. And for the corn and soybean growers, I'm going to have a talk about Midwest issues. Because right now in the Midwest, our soil moisture values are still quite low. And we're concerned about what this might mean going into the growing season. Should we not have enough kind of, moisture in the tank to get us through? Should we get into some drier spring and drier summer conditions? Now, the latest root zone soil moisture map modeled by NASA shows major improvements throughout a lot of Ag South territory. And with the rain that's coming in very, very soon, that's going to be critical as well. But I thought you might find this interesting. I'm going to rewind the clock a year, and I want to show you what was going on back on March the 8th, 2023. We were actually quite dry into spring last year. And you can see the lack at this point in early spring of soil moisture in this area. One interesting thing to take note of, if we just kind of broaden this out across the whole U.S., major snows in the west a year ago, of course, but this area right here, deficits in soil moisture that you see, these were all corrected when the snow that was sitting on top of it melted. And I just want to point that out because this particular region of the country last year was able to endure drought, and you grow crops that compete with this section of the country, primarily corn and soybeans, right? But this bought them about 6 weeks worth of time such that, a month or 2 months later in May, we were saturated here. And it's interesting to note where we ended up last May. Most of Ag South territory was not staring down drought a year ago. So I think it's important to look at these things in a context. That's why we took a quick trip back about a year ago. What is also different about a year ago is this. This is where our temperatures have been. Very cold west and record heat for this time of year in the midsection of the country since February. Now, we're about to flip this pattern on its head, and it's going to change things a lot. There's a large ridge building into the west, middle of the month. It's going to drive much colder air into the southeast, and we're going to have to start talking about a late March frost risk in this area. So I need to get to that in a few moments. But first, let's look at what this warmer air has done. This is just a look at the latest growing degree day anomalies since February 1st, comparing them to historical averages. I'm using the formula for corn, so a base of 50 and a max of 86. And for most of Ag South territory, we're looking at a 10 to up to 50 GDD advantage over average. And I say it's an advantage as long as we don't get major cold risk coming back in. So that's why we're going to have to talk about this and this potential pattern change that is coming up here. All right, from here, let's take a look at reminding you about one important tool. Just so that you know this, I've got over here on my main website, ag-wx.com, the ability for you to go look at all of this historical data. Now, I always pick on Raleigh, so that's what's top of mind for me right now. So if I start typing in Raleigh, it brings up a drop-down list. You click on your location. It'll put a number in there that's representing its index value in my system. I've got 30,000 cities in this database. You click Submit, and it hits my servers and generates your own forecast. Now, what's unique about my forecast is I pack in a lot of additional information, including historic information. You got your normal radar stuff, you got your current conditions, but I got some fun stats up here, plus a good 7-day outlook. What I want you to do, though, is scroll to the bottom and look at this. Now, what's interesting is Raleigh so far through this year is a bit off. We're at about 87% of normal precip through this early new year. But you can also see previous years, and you can even click them off, so you can get rid of them if you want. Like, let's just take a look at last year, like the dry stretch we had in October, November. See it there? So you can do this with any city that's in my database, and I'm about to expand this in a major way to not just include any city, but any location. I'm pretty excited about that coming up. But we were talking about temperatures a moment ago. That's precipitation. Here's our year-to-date temperatures. And you can see we've spent very little time with cooler weather since the start of this new year, just 3 short time periods of colder than average conditions. And as a result, go over to the year-to-date GDD calculation, and this is where we currently sit. We're just a hair above that white line, which would be average. And I get to this because I want to talk about these blue bars. What they represent is your historic frost events since 1981. And our average last first frost is somewhere at the very beginning of April. But we can have them all the way to April 10th, even out to the end of April. So what I want to tell you is that I think the end of March, going into that first week of April after Easter, is going to be on the cooler side of things based off information I have today. So that just means we could still be in for a later frost event compared to our historical averages here. And we're going to talk about that again in a few moments. So please use this resource. I hope you find it valuable and insightful. This is what's changing. Since the beginning of February, there's been a ridge north of Hawaii. That's forced strong jet stream winds to come in here, which have built into deep troughs over the west and large ridges coming up the east. That's what's given us such mild conditions. This is going away. Now, to show you it in the forecast, take a look. Right now, it's there. See it? See, that's the ridge. So what do we get? Well, we get this next trough rolling over us, bringing in the rain, the chance of severe storms, and the heavy precipitation, and then it's out. The ridge is still there by next Monday, which is why we have another deep trough that comes into the west, and it dives down here into the south. But did you notice what happened from next Monday through next Friday? Monday through Friday. What did we do? The models replaced that that large ridge with the deep trough. So the flow has to go around it, and it bunches up and slows down and drives a deeper low into this area. And as this ridge of warm air presses along the west coast, it reinforces the risk of colder air east once we get out to the 17th, 18th, and 19th. So I'm saying we have about 9 more days of what we've been seeing. And then after the 17th, the colder risk starts to come in. I think it lasts toward the end of the month. Maybe that first week of April. I'll give you that case in point in a few moments. Now, that is the bigger picture. We still have the near term to talk about, which means that big sections of Georgia right now are under flood watches. And this is all due to the recent heavy rains plus the forecast that's expected to come. And that flood risk not only extends into this part of South Carolina, but goes all the way back over to Louisiana. And that's all a part of the first system that's rolling through, where today we have severe storm risk across the south near the Gulf Coast. And then tomorrow on Saturday, the 9th, That's where we're going to keep an eye out on Ag South territory for the risk of these stronger storms. It looks something like this in the high-res models. We'll pick this up early this morning on Friday and play through Friday afternoon and evening. Rain and storms will begin to spread out of Mississippi and Alabama through Georgia at this point. And as we get into the overnight hours on Friday, it spreads into the Carolinas through Georgia. And then as we get into early Saturday morning, heavy rains playing through the Carolinas. But watch what happens late in the evening here, or really in the afternoon, evening here in Georgia and South Carolina. That's when I think we're going to get the risk of those strong storms rolling through as the main front cuts in. Now that system exits, that's Saturday night. It's out by Saturday overnight into Sunday morning. Could be some light snow coming in on the backside hitting the Appalachian Mountains. But then we go over into a bit of a break. And we want to know how long that break is going to last. So if you take a look, GFS is left, European is right. So this is the US flagship model. This is the European's flagship model. This is the system we just analyzed. Right there, sliding through Saturday. By Sunday morning, it's out. Now we go into Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday with high pressure. And then the chances for showers start to increase late next week. Look over here as another system comes through. So after you get through this weekend, we're going to watch most of next week on a drier run. But then another big push late on Friday that could sneak into that area, delivering another round of precip. Now that takes us out about 10 days. And I want to show you some new forecast information that was just given to me last Friday. The European model, which since last October has been running a special AI or machine learning version of itself, was kind of kept under wraps. I've shown it to you a couple of times from their site, but on Friday last week they made it publicly available. And this is the 10-day AI forecast from the European model. It's pretty amazing. I can't wait to incorporate it into all my mapping systems because I want to compare this to what the European operational run is doing. As we play it out, there's the first round of rain coming through. Notice this shading here. We're getting well over 2 inches in pockets. And then we wait Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. When's the next round come through? Watch, this is next Thursday. There it is, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And if you look over the next 10 days, we're looking really wet in through here, encroaching in on Ag South territory. This is what the GFS model says. It's even wetter into Georgia and South Carolina. Places here possibly picking up maybe better than 2 to 3, maybe 4 inches of rain, especially as you get farther back to the west. From there, though, I want to show you the snow risk, maybe in the Appalachian Mountains, picking up a little bit. But overall, this is the probability in the next 10 days of getting an inch, which means there is no near-term drought risk developing in Ag South territory. That's a chance of an inch. Here's the chance at 2 inches. So there's about a 50% chance that we get 2 inches of rain out of this, and possibly even more with the heaviest rains being here. This is the chance of getting 4 inches. What happens after this 10-day time period? Well, the jet builds into a ridge west and tosses a large ridge into Canada, northwest flow that meets up with the subtropical jet. The net effect of that is to keep the south wet into the southeast in all three models. Drier north, drier in the west. Now, all of that is just the next 2 weeks. I told you at the beginning I want to focus on the long range in this, and that's what I've got for you at the end here. Now, the temperature risks that I'm concerned about are coming in around the 17th to the 21st. And that's starting to press toward where we get near, especially the farther south you go, our last frost dates. We need to know what the risk looks like out here. In the near term, everywhere in gray is where I expect to have a frost over the next 7 days. And nothing about this is out of the ordinary. Okay, that's fine. That's what we typically expect in terms of climatologically normal temperatures. The risk factor is the fact that we've already accumulated this much heat, and this is what our temperatures have been before this. So when we start to look out there and see colder air coming back in, we have a lot of the ag sector here is sensitive to any cold air that's coming in. So let's have a look at what the temperatures are going to do. Here's Friday getting into Saturday. A little bit of cold air damming along the Appalachian Mountains here this weekend. We get into Sunday, of course, that's going to be cool as the rain leaves, the cold air comes in behind it. But by Monday to Tuesday, we begin to transition back over mild. So a lot of temperatures mid to late next week in the 70s. But that only gets you to the 14th. If we look out there between day 5 through 10, which will get us out almost to the 17th and 18th, we're still mild. But it is starting on the 17th and following that our temperature risk begins to go to the cold side. And all the major models are showing this right now. And what I want to do is I want to flip over to the European model, and we're going to start to look at the risk of getting a temperature below 40 degrees Fahrenheit. That's when I start to get concerned about frosts. This is next Sunday morning on the 17th. If we go into Monday morning, we now see that right in through here, there's a better than 50% chance that our temperatures are below 40, which starts to increase our frost risk. This goes out there to Tuesday, the 19th. Now we're in 50 to 60% chance range. And then we go on out there to the 20th. There we go. That's the morning of the 20th. That's the time frame, the 17th to the 20th. I think we're going to see our coolest air for this first big shot. But it may last. The cooler air may last all the way to the 28th through Easter and maybe even the first week of April. So the models have been picking up on that pattern. Now, since that we're already out here through the first week of April, let's just park it out there by maybe April 12th and say, all right, we've got cooler air coming in after the next 8 days. It could last to the end of March into the beginning of April. What's the precip expected to do during that time? And the models just want to keep you wet. And that matches up with our analogs, right? We've kind of talked about how we expected wetter than average conditions in Ag South territory, maybe a little bit drier to our west and north. But we did know cooler air was going to be coming in late in the month. We talked a lot about that. Its duration is going to primarily be linked to the MJO. And very quickly, this is what I want to tell you. If I start talking next week about the MJO, which will be about here next week, sweeping way out into the phase 8, phase 1 on this diagram, we got colder risks sticking around. If it collapses or comes back out over into phase 4 and 5 a month from now, all that cold risk is gone. That's, I think, our biggest connection. And this is all riding on top of El Nino. El Nino is transitioning to neutral and La Nina conditions. If you take a look at this is through January into February. Watch right in through here at the beginning of March. Can you keep your eye right there? Here comes the first bit of cooler water surfacing. And over the next 6 weeks, there's going to be a ribbon of cooler water. It's going to have a bit of a wave to it that'll roll right into this area, signaling the end of this El Nino in the ocean temperatures. The reality is El Nino kind of backed off a while ago. This is just the ocean temperature response. So you need to know that we have two competing thoughts right now about the longer range. And to be honest with you, while these thoughts compete against one another, the models are not yet calling for drought development in Ag South territory through spring and summer. And I'm going to tell you, I have no confidence in it. I'm going to show you why. What you've got here is a forecast from the CFSV2 model on the left, the European model on the right. And what it's predicting is the rate at which El Nino transitions into La Nina, with the CFSV2, which is a NOAA model, epically crashing El Nino into not just La Nina, but a Super Nina by late summer into fall. The European slower. They say, well, what's the result? The result is this. Now we're going to look at these 6 maps, but what they do is they start off March, April, May, June, and so on till you get to August, September, October. In each one, look real quick. We do not see this model predicting drought. You say, well, why? It's because this is trying to set us up with a summer pattern that looks something like this. Not something like that. That would be the worry. Big ridging over the southeast, but this model isn't doing it. It's trying to let drought creep in this summer out of the southern plains, pushing it by summer into the Midwest, and then by August, September, October, full-on repeat of like 1988 in the midsection of the United States. That's what it's doing. We just ask, is there any consistency between this and other models, remembering that it is the model that is most aggressive of every global model on killing El Nino and delivering a powerful La Nina. You know what else it's doing? It's also trying to bring in a very active hurricane season. So let's flip this over to what the European model is doing. I'm going to take you back to the beginning of this. March, April, May, wet. April, May, June, near normal to wetter than normal. May, June, July, still pretty darn close to normal. We think it out there to June, July, August. It's trying to bring in what looks like drier conditions into parts of Georgia and South Carolina, but I'm still not seeing alarm bells in the model just yet. And this is July, August, September, right when the hurricane season should get cranking. And the model's like, yep, bring it, big time. Now, I'm going to draw over this because I want to tell you what I'm concerned about. Historical analogs of years which had a peaking El Nino in December, fading into late winter and spring, and either ending by spring into summer or even going into full La Nina. They tended to produce ridges of high pressure here or here. That's what they did. About half the time, they sat over the southwest. The other half of the time, they sat over the southeast. And I do not know which one is going to be favored this year. If we end up having this scenario, then we have major drought risk going forward. If it's over here, not a chance. If it's over in Texas, we're looking good for thunderstorms, a lack of heat. But when you look at all the years combined, this was the area that tended to show the driest risk going into the April to October timeframe for years where El Nino faded into La Nina. And I'm drawing over the top of this map to show you that the models are not seeing this just yet. But can I also tell you something about these models? You know what their skill scores were last year? -20. So they did not do a good job predicting last year. So I'm going to show you all of them by giving you the newest ones that just came out yesterday. That's the April, May, June precipitation anomalies. Again, this model not showing the risk of drought. This would be the May, June, July, still wetter. This is now the June, July, August, still wetter. This is the July, August, September, still wetter, active hurricane season, drought building out of the Four Corners, Great Basin through the Midwest. That's what the model's doing. And I am just going to, so you know, don't look at this and make massive assumptions. We have yet to get through the spring barrier in forecasting with El Nino to know if we run the risk of ridging over the southeast or over the southern plains. And I can't pin it down just yet, but it's a possibility. Now, these same models are attempting for April, May, June to give us drier conditions here in Brazil. And why that's important is this section of Mato Grosso, even into Mato Grosso do Sul over the last month, has been getting drier. And we see that the forecast over the next 10 days is drier. And there's a safrinha crop that's in here now. And this is some of the new data just shown up today that while this is going over drier, Argentina is wetter, and the new long-range models want to keep that around through mid-April when the monsoon begins to slow down. And what I want to show you here is that all week long, this forecast for this time period, in fact, let's go back and look at it. I'll just zip back a couple of days. How about to the 1st? It was much wetter earlier with our forecasts. And now we start to see this drier trend for that time period. And it's just got us wondering, are we going to get back into a regime where we start to see significant risks on a safrinha crop? Most of it's corn, some of it's cotton. So let's watch it carefully. There could be an important story coming out of South America. I'll tell you about it again next week. Have a good one. Thanks.